Yes, all right. I think we start. Usually there are always some people coming a little bit later because they missed the train or something like that, which cannot happen. So first of all, welcome everybody, and nice to have you here. My name is Moritz Schild. My name is still wrong. I'm one of the co-founders of Hanseatic Blockchain Institute and on the board. And we are a German association trying to make blockchain kind of more popular and to explain it and to talk about it and to discuss and to develop concepts and ideas. And one of the things we do in this direction is that we organize what happens tonight is our Blomo Blockchain Monday, because since our foundation back in early 2019, we have organized a Blockchain Monday each and every Monday evening. And this used to be a physical event, which was pretty nice because networking and after talk drinks and all this was much easier. Nonetheless, under COVID conditions, we switched to a virtual event, and amongst the positive aspects of that is that we are able to have speakers from different locations joining our events, and we already had people from Moscow, from London, from Tel Aviv in the last weeks, and I'm very happy that today we have two blockchain specialists joining from Paris in France. So just briefly before we move to our subject, we are an association based in Hamburg. We are open for new members, we are open for ideas, and should you have any kind of topics you want to discuss, please let us know, put it in the chat or wherever you like, or send us an email. Very much looking forward to it. Finally, one kind of technical issue for all our members. We are going to have a Mitgliederversammlung for our association, which we intend to do in December. If you have any topics you want to be covered in this Mitgliederversammlung, please let us know, let me know. For our discussion today, as I mentioned briefly, we have two speakers together. It's Marc Durand, who has been working particularly with IBM for quite a few years, and I'm always happy that we have not only these young, dynamic guys in the blockchain space, but also some people that have been in the industry for a little bit longer. And he co-founded the company with Maxime Jantet.
Yeah, Jantet.
Jantet, yeah.
Jantet. Company is called Kapalt, and Kapalt is advising corporations on the introduction on feasibility of blockchain projects. We are happy to have you here. Thank you very much. Everybody who has a remark to make, has a question to the speakers, please actively use either the chat function or particularly the Q&A function that should be on your screen. And then we'll see the questions and we'll come to them and we'll answer them hopefully together. We intend to start with a short introduction to blockchain, and then we'll use an illustrative example of a live project you are doing, and then step into the project methodology, and then afterwards we'll hopefully have some time for question and answers. That's essentially from me. We are very happy to have you here. Thanks a lot. And as I mentioned earlier, we already in the very beginning of the Blockchain Institute had a person from the Paris blockchain scene who introduced us to Monad. That was a tokenization project for art. So you can buy small pieces of art, and the project is online, is still alive, which I like pretty much. But now I would like to hand over to both of you. Marc, Maxime, thank you for being with us tonight, and maybe you should give a short intro to yourself, Marc, and tell us how you got to blockchain.
Okay, thank you, for this presentation. Very happy and honored to be here tonight with Maxime. As you said, my background was mostly I spent almost 30 years within IBM in the consulting part. So mostly halfway between business and IT. And I just moved to BPM, and afterwards I moved to cloud and software parts and begin to work on blockchain a little bit by chance. And I finished by being responsible for the offering of blockchain for IBM Cloud in France. And a little more than 2 years ago, I left IBM to co-create with Maxime afterwards a company dedicated to blockchain to try to implement and have a holistic view of blockchain, let's say an end-to-end view of blockchain for different size of company. We are working with startup and sometimes large company and try to have let's say a pragmatic view of blockchain, not based on only idea and theory, but try to implement a project in the real world.
Perfect, cool. Maxime has a very bad internet connection, but maybe you just give a short intro about how you stepped into this space, and then we start with your presentation.
Yes. So good evening, everyone. Maxime Jantet. So I discovered blockchain in 2013 and 14. First, like because I was quite interested to invest in Bitcoin or Ethereum later on. And then in parallel, I started my career in the financial industry, where I worked for an insurance company called Aviva, UK based. And then I worked at BNP Paribas on merger and acquisition LBO project based in Milan. When I came back in Paris, I started going to some like blockchain event. It was like it started to be the big hype of ICOs on quite around the world. So I started working for a few startups based in Paris, and that's where I discovered, after a year in the space, blockchain is more beyond the technology. It's more about ecosystem. And startup they don't really have an ecosystem. They are more working on the application value. So that's where I co-founded Kapalt to try to implement blockchain within company that's already in place and already work within an ecosystem to implement blockchain.
Yeah, cool. So shall we start? I think, can you share your screen? I can just give you the authorization, and now it should work.
It looks possible, at least. Yes, it is. Is it okay? Did you see it?
We see it.
Let me put the full screen. Yes, and it will go. So first,
so I will start presenting the first part of the presentation. And if you can go on so on the first part, I will be introducing so blockchain for enterprise, and then we will move to Marc will illustrate what I've said through different projects in production, and also giving like a first glance into methodology. How do you start a blockchain initiative, and how do you manage a blockchain project? And then we will answer a question.
Okay.
So on this first part, I will be introducing blockchain, so how it works, what problem does it solve, how to differentiate different type of networks on blockchain, because we see there is quite a few on nowadays. When you read in the press or any press release, blockchain tend to become quite a buzzword. So there is quite a lot of concept behind the word. On some are not entirely blockchain technology. So you need to be careful, and most importantly, where blockchain can be used, or in what context you can use it on your within your business. So the first things first, what blockchain on DLT is solving, why blockchain is a revolution. So it actually, blockchain solve a unique problem that has been around for the past 40 years. If you think of the internet, it's a telecommunication protocol that helps you to to transmit data from one point to another. But when you do that, you duplicate pretty much everything. So you don't have the features that can create unique digital data or digital assets. And that's what blockchain has been solving at the moment. So if you think of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a blockchain network. Bitcoin is running on a blockchain network. And the real power of blockchain is beyond the fact that it creates a monetary system self-autonomous. It's more the fact that it's a promise that you will have 21 million Bitcoin, not more, and you cannot duplicate Bitcoin or try to fake Bitcoin within the network. So if you think of that uniqueness property, then you can create different networks with an oriented into digital assets, where you can like try to collaborate with within your ecosystem on streamline a lot of business process. So in other words, yeah, it creates on secure digital assets. So a digital asset, we will see it a bit later. It's more, it could be tangible or intangible. It can take the various form. It could be a data or anything else. It gives you as well a protocol, so a standard way to transact with some rule. In some network, you will still have trusted third party, because you still on some network need gatekeepers. On other network, we'll see it remove the need for third parties or gatekeeper. Because when you deal with digital asset, the big risk is ownership. So if you are on some use case, you can get some big problem if your asset gets stolen. So when you envelope blockchain, it's always come to where do you trust? Where do you put your trust? So that's what blockchain is actually solving. And it was quite a problem for quite a lot of industry 20 years ago. For example, the film or the music industry, where with the emergence of internet, you could get one music and duplicate this music to pretty much everyone. So blockchain is actually an accumulation of technology. It's not one technology created from scratch. It's a combination of technology. that have been created over the year, over 30 years of technological evolution. The first one is public key. Public key is widely used in all your emails on in the internet. Then you have the timestamp. So that's what you use pretty much in PDF or in any document managed system. So you can timestamp your document with a date, with an hour. Then you have the SHA algorithm. That's one of the key element that was created by the NSA. So the famous intelligence agency in the USA, and it actually enables you to create a fingerprint of any piece of data. So that's what is going to be used in most of the blockchain system to create that uniqueness features. And then it is combined with a peer-to-peer network. Peer-to-peer network. I mean, I've been around for quite some time, but the most famous one people remember of is the Napster network. So I don't know if you've seen the movie The Social Network. One of the co-founder of Facebook at the end of during the movie was the creator of Napster. So it could allow you to pretty much buy your music, put it on this network, diffuse it, distribute it for free, as well get some music back on the other way. When you combine those 4 technology plus the consensus algorithm, you create in 2008 what was like the first white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, who's Bitcoin, who created the Bitcoin network. Then it was a constant technological improvement during the last 10 years, where you have a different other framework. So as I said, blockchain is.
Sorry, if I may just ask one question. I like the picture you had before, but you said the blockchain was just combining the 4 kind of the techniques that existed beforehand. Do you think? From my point of view, blockchain used these pre-existing techniques. However, it added, it not only combined, but it added the idea of well, the avoidance of double spending and the kind of a clear differentiation between identity and the link between the owner and the wallet, or would you look at it differently?
I mean, the identity part of a blockchain network is completely separated. Like, for example, in Bitcoin, okay, you have your your identity is your wallet, so it doesn't clearly if you created a wallet from scratch without using any platform, you could stay completely anonymous, at least. So it doesn't really, I mean, in the blockchain, on the Bitcoin network, it doesn't really emphasize the digital identity part of that network. But what was the rest of the question?
No, the question was it's not only combination, but there is also added value and added algorithm, which is absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's the
Okay,
4 main technology that have been combined, and then you also have various consensus algorithm. On depending on the consensus algorithm you use, you design different networks for different type of application. So for most of the networks we will see later on the presentation doesn't use the same consensus algorithm or the same set of rules to validate transaction than the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, but the example of double spending is absolutely true for Bitcoin. It's a specific part, and absolutely, yeah, it's combination in our meaning. Doesn't mean it's just assembling pre-existing technology. It's pre-existing technology plus a big added value from different sources. Yeah.
So as I was saying, blockchain is need to be thought about digital asset. So those digital assets could take a different form. It could be you could be digitalizing a house, a car, a land, like doing like pretty much a twin, a digital twin of that asset on a blockchain network, but could also be intangible like patent, securities, or you can even create new form of asset like Bitcoin, for example, on a blockchain network. So the blockchain network needs to be a peer-to-peer distributed ledger that is forged around a consensus, and the consensus then can change depending on the ecosystem, on the rule, or on the transaction you want to be modelizing. So if we put all what we said in a digital transformation context, we can see that, like for example, in a business network evolution way, at the beginning of the year 2000, all the organization had formed like a very centralized architecture to deal with the internet on digital, and then they pretty much moved to a current to what we are to the state we are moving right now, which is like they are quite opening all those architecture with APIs, with third-party architectures, so they can decentralize. They still, all their database are still centralized, but other company can use them. So that's, for example, you may have heard of open banking, which is where you can start using a database from banks on or other like pretty much the whole cloud movement is in that current state. On blockchain is in our opinion the next phase, where you have you are moving to forming different ecosystem, so deploying blockchain infrastructure to design and to form a new digital transformation towards the external process, instead of only doing digital transformation on internal process. Now 98% of the of digital transformation is about automation on your on business side within the company. We think the progressively company will move forward into collaboration with other business, so they can collaborate on be more agile with within their ecosystem. So if we illustrate like theoretically what we've been saying, what we realize is at the moment everything is siloed. Everyone have their own architecture. On every architecture, when they are dealing with the external world, it's a mess. You're using email, you're using PDF, Excel, and you have to do reconciliation on every end of the process. So when you move like a whole process from a blockchain-based perspective, you realize like you're gonna deploy a share ledger where you can modelize the asset you want to that will be flowing into the network, on share all the data that can speed up the process of doing business. So for example, I'm a manufacturer, I want to sell a car to a dealer. I can do that only if the regulator issues the plate of the car. So I can pretty much, when the car is finished, triggers an event to the regulator that will issue the plate, on like all the different events will be registered within the ledger that will create a unique shared vision of the state of the asset. So that's something quite powerful that could like streamline a lot of different process on improve transaction-based process. So there is quite a lot of debate in what is blockchain, what is not blockchain. So obviously, blockchain started with Bitcoin. What we see as converging as an industry at the moment is there is something common to all blockchain. So I was talking about it earlier. You have it needs to be a peer-to-peer network that. So you need to be allowed to decentralize the infrastructure and allow everyone to have a copy of the ledger and see what's happening on the digital asset. Each share a ledger. This ledger will be storing a single truth of transaction recognized by all participants. So truth in that way, when you design an enterprise grade blockchain, it means you agree on the state of the truth. Obviously you can improve that state if along the way you realize it's missing some transaction or some data, but there is no real truth. You need to be to agree on what is the truth within your network. On its use, it's a consensus protocol. So that's what that's cryptography based, and it will help you to design and to validate transaction. All of that, all of those features will guarantee you some level of immutability. So if you're talking about Bitcoin or Ethereum, so you will be talking about pretty much like guaranteed immutability, because they are using all the most secured technology or designed blockchain network so it's pretty much impossible. For when you're talking about enterprise blockchain based network, since you know with who you're transacting with, immutability might not be impossible, but if a few actors collude, but you will be they will be identified quite quickly. So then you have that's the common base of all blockchain, and then you have the permission blockchain where you fit Bitcoin, Ethereum. That's where you see pretty much everyone can access those blockchain. No, there are no prerequisite of identification. You only need internet connection, and then you will be able to transact on those network or build on those network. And then you have the permission network, and that's where Kapalt is working, is more focused on, is helping company to build their own ecosystem and deploy blockchain where it fits in terms of business application. So those networks are completely closed, and they are using those networks only with people with other company well identified, where they want to do excellence, operational excellency, or resolve some pain point they have in their business. So in a nutshell, a blockchain-based network is a shared ledger. So it's a very unique database where you cannot really use the function of updating or deleting data. It can only be dynamically added or changed. Then it uses obviously a cryptography. So depending on the network you want to be doing, consensus on smart contract. Smart contract is pretty much the in between your blockchain on your business application. So it will automate a lot of business term of business logic between all. So it will be going back and forth all your database on your business architecture on the blockchain you will be sharing with other people to automate a lot of event or transaction. So when you think of blockchain, blockchain is not an application or a website. It's a very low protocol that will help you to get quality data or streamline business process within an ecosystem. So it's always turn outside it's your company toward the outside and not the inside. It's a kind of a unique database where decentralization and network are key. As I said before, the normal function you can use on a database like update or delete are, I say, almost impossible depending on what network you're talking about. If you think of blockchain within your business, you need to think about IT collaboration, so data sharing on multi-party business workflow or ecosystem. So that's if you have a very internal process you want to digitalize or you want to automate, I'm pretty sure in 99% of the case, blockchain won't work, or at least it will work, maybe a bit, but there is a faster on a more mature technology out there for your business issue.
Okay, thank you, Maxime. So let's move to the part 2, which is some illustration of this concept and to see in what could be a real project, because as stated by Maxime, in blockchain, you know that even if it's now an old technology because it's 10 years. There is still a lot of buzz, and it's very difficult to know what is really in production and why it works or why it doesn't work so well that some people were expecting at the beginning, or at least were trying to sell that blockchain will save the world, which is far from being the reality right now. So if we take just an historical point of view, of course, we are not going to enter in all these different industrial sectors. Just to say that, of course, like blockchain begin with Bitcoin and crypto money. So the first area of investigation by corporate has been finance, trade finance, pre and post trade, because the bank want to see first if they can be some way disrupt, but also if they can use this technology to help in terms of reconciliation and compensation within the system, and which is very costly and very difficult task. So the first to make experiment was bank, financial institution, insurance, reinsurance, company like that. But little by little, it has extended well beyond this area. And we see now for about, let's say, 3 or 4 years, a lot of focus in industrial sector, in supply chain, in logistic, traceability, but also in health, in energy, in telco. Well, you can name any sectors, most of them, and also public sectors, which is trying to use more and more blockchain, or at least some principle of blockchain. It was a debate between public blockchain and, let's say, consortium or private blockchain. Doesn't say it's more consortium or organization blockchain. And there is more and more project focusing on a very large retail, for instance, are using more and more blockchain in terms of trying to streamline the process and traceability. So just a very short focus on supply chain related project. You see some of them on traceability, on logistic, on compliance. So it touch every sector. It can be CPG with people like Coca-Cola. It can be minerals, traceability of some cobalt or any different material. Can be luxurious product like diamond or LVMH for fraud, for instance. Can be food safety like Walmart, Carrefour, any company is working in the world around traceability. So it's aerospace, of course, maintenance of parts. So it's really, and compliance is something which we see much more and more product. So we will just do a focus on two. We pick 2 projects. There is, of course, a lot, but we want to pick these 2 projects because they are interesting. One is in logistics, supply chain, and global trade lanes. And the second one is more finance, but it has a real cross-industry flavor. So if we take trade lanes is just link and Hamburg. You know about the importance of marine freight and marine and sea carriers. So trade lanes is just to try to solve one of the big issue of global trade. Is there is a lot of actors. There is bank, airline, airport, port, ocean carrier, authority, custom, and so on, which are exchanging an enormous quantity of documents. And so far, most of this exchange are paper-based. It's fax, it's even telex. So it's a very time-consuming and absolutely not efficient exchange of documents, which is done one by one and different formats. So if you look at the complexity of the bank, for the importers, the carrier, and every actor, there is a lot of lack of real-time information, a lot of paper-based processes, manual processes. There is no optimization, lack of visibility, and most of the process in this part is still paper-based. So it's there is duplication of administrative process. So it's time consuming, but also after you have always an operation or reconciliation, just because on the same process, two parties were their own logic, their own philosophy, their own silo. So there is no single version of the truth. So the idea of Merck here, Merck is a leader at the basis, so it's a #1 marine carrier in the world, but they cannot work alone. So this is the interest of blockchain. They are trying to move and to build something which will be a global share infrastructure, rather to go peer-to-peer communication one by one between the different actors in the administrative task. Never forget that in a global trade for marine operation, about 50% of the cost is not linked to the transformation by itself or logistic. 50% of the cost is administrative cost. So it's a huge part of the cost in the whole process. So the goal was to try to build a global infrastructure to be shared by all the actors. And if you say that, it's of course, the benefits is not going only to Merck. Merck must have most as possible actors and competitors to use the same infrastructure to streamline all the logistic part and all the communication between all these different third party in the same process. So they have launched this project about, let's say, well, it's a long story, but it began around 5 years ago, and they begin to build something. They work on the base on Hyperledger Fabric with IBM, and little by little they build something which were, of course, it must be open because the data must be the data of all the company. If the data are only the private data of Merck, it has absolutely no interest, and it should have been an enormous investment with no return on investment. The goal was to have a shared infrastructure. So it's exactly the fact that you take part of your process and you share with all the actors, okay? You keep your data, of course, the data are private. You keep your data because it's your own data, but you can exchange part of them with the people you are dealing with on a regular basis, and rather to do peer-to-peer operation. So if you look at it's a real success, because now you just have to think about the result. It's about 50% of the global trade ecosystem with able to use trade lanes infrastructure. So you have 24 million containers we are tracked. You have 10 million documents on a very periodic basis, and you have now around 1.2 billion events, which correspond to 100 different type of events since it's put in production, and it's now in production for about, let's say, 3 years, 2.5 years, 3 years. And what is very important here, it's a very partial list because it's moving every day. You have important infrastructure. We are associated with the project. You have Rotterdam, you have Sydney, you have Melbourne, you have port in Russia now, you have port in Spain, you have Los Angeles, Miami, African port, and you have also not only the private company, there is private company, it's about 6 of the 10 more important maritime company which are involved in this, but you have also customs from Australia, Singapore, Saudi, Netherlands, which are directly involved in the project. So it's something which is in production, which is working quite fine, and which is increasing very, very quickly, which is now something I say we can handle 50% of the whole global trade traffic, which is quite a success in terms of blockchain. Another project is linked more to the, it's not a banking situation, it's how to solve dispute resolution with a company. Here, it's a B2B bank, okay? It's just IGF, which is a subsidiary of IBM, which is doing global financing for project, for buying servers, doing project, whatever technology. So it's a pure commercial environment. It's a B2B environment. So the goal was, let's say, very simple, straightforward in terms of dollars. They have 2.9 million transactions per year, okay? And there is around 4,000 suppliers and partners in the world working together and buying and selling parts, servers, software, providing services, okay? So what is very important is 43 billion finance, which is quite a big figure, but you have also 25,000 disputes every year. So the process is very simple. When there is a dispute, of course, the bank is obliged to do a provision just because they have to solve the problem of dispute between the provider and the supplier because they are involved in the situation. So what was working before? It was the same system. It was one by one, peer-to-peer discussion, exchange of documents. Nobody have a view of the global system. And what was very important is due to the number of disputes and the average duration, which was 44 days, the bank was obliged to have $100 million tied up in terms of provision for the dispute project. So the idea was to put everybody on a blockchain, take part of the information that you can see in the actual system. So it's like a shadow. It's not a substitute of the transactional system. It's a shadow where you take some information which can be shared by all the people, all the company in terms of doing business together. Of course, if you are not dealing with a company, is AAB are not linked by a contract, they have no reason to exchange data or to see the data, okay? It's just private to a business relationship. And you add the logistic, you had DHL, we say, I have delivered at this date the server to this company, and you have a single view of the situation between the order, the fulfillment, and the billing, which is something which everybody working in a company knows that is something which is always a nightmare in a company when they are dealing with their customers, okay? So what are the results? Now you have a solution, we combine data by all the actors, and you have a consolidated and detailed view of all the transactions. So the result is very straightforward. The dispute moved from 40 days to an average of less than 10 days. Okay, so you have two effects. First effect is you reduce the number of disputes because everybody knows everybody action. So you don't open a litige for no reason. You have to have a very good reason because you have all the information. And if you try to hide something, it's just impossible. Okay, so you reduce the number of litige of disputes, sorry, and you divide by more than 4 the time duration. So the result is there is 40% capital efficiency. So it's moved from $100 million in provision to around $60 million in provision. So if you say that to a CFO, in general, it can be interesting. There is a second effect, which is very, very, very important, is the fact that all the people are a very reliable, view of the situation. So you provide all the stakeholders with good information, detailed view, and real-time view, which is something which has a very high business value. Even if it's not the scope is to solve quicker the dispute, but the side effect is to provide all the participants in the network with very good information, viable, and something that it was impossible to get even in real time before, and also with the accuracy. So it's something which is very important for all partners in the loop. So nice result. So why is everybody not doing blockchain today? Well, let's go straight to the point and very quickly. The main reason to use blockchain and or DLT, as said by Maxime, there is two different flavors, but whatever. The problem is, do you need to have a permanent and indelible record of transaction? Do you need to share data across a business network? And do you need to avoid a central point of control of ownership? Are you ready to share? Do you need to share? And you don't need a third party to be the substitute and to be the only focal point. So you need to build trust within an ecosystem. After, you can have a bonus. Do you want to share the business rule and data? And you can have smart contract to make some process much more efficient, directly executed. So it's the 3 or 4 points that's absolutely necessary when you look to a problem to see, is blockchain a solution, part of the solution, or outside of the scope. So if you look at the way a company is looking to blockchain, you have to begin. I don't say that it must be an intra-company focus, but you have to look at what are the best, the most important issues that you can have, and is a blockchain a potential solution for it. So you don't look at the whole world as the first step. The first step is to try to identify in your ecosystem what are the main issues, what are the main problems. The second part is to look more with the ecosystem, can be the regular ecosystem, like in the case of Merck's, it's a regular ecosystem for them, or do you want to build something which is more new, with new partner, new supplier, new distribution modes, and so on and so on. And little by little, you can go to a new business model. But keep in mind that most of the projects that we see in production now are really, really looking about efficiency, reduction of cost, and not always and never at the beginning. It's very rare that you have a new business model. It's possible, it exists, but most of the live projects are more oriented now for efficiency and try to work better in the ecosystem. So there is, quickly speaking, 4 flavors of blockchain initiatives. The first one is we can call it record keeper. So you want to keep management by one entity for itself or community, can be diploma, can be business ID, can be land registry, can be health information. Okay, this is one part of the project. Second part is more oriented on efficiency play. You want to have better processes, improve your transaction and tracking provenance of assets. So it's Merck's, can be a financial product in derivative, can be reinsurance. And after you have new project, we are linked to digital asset market. So it can be new market based on digital asset. We are formed from no digital one. It can be physical, like gold, like energy, or it can be post-trade, virtual asset, for instance, in tokenization for real estate. So you are dealing with new type of asset. And the last model is something that we see a lot of proof of concept, a lot of try. It's linked to a disruptive new business recall on this technology and try to be more efficient in a new way of collaborating between all companies. So if you look at, very quickly to finish, just a project in blockchain is something like, okay, you use MVP, you use proof of concept, but what is very interesting in this approach is that you have to think about a roadmap. And most of the projects of blockchain are just failing just because they are looking of proof of concept, MVP. They are not really looking at the big picture. What are the roadmap? How are they gonna move in the ecosystem? So it's something which is quite static, and blockchain is working only if you are a dynamic view, even if you go step by step. Beginning, when we say MVP, everybody know MVP, minimum viable product, but the equivalent for blockchain is MVE, minimum viable ecosystem. You have to think ecosystem, and you have to identify where are the people you want to work with at the beginning, keeping in mind that in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, if you need to succeed, and if you want to succeed, you need to increase this ecosystem. It's exactly like MERS. You begin with one port, one company, maybe one custom, and little by little, you know that you have to attract a bigger ecosystem, or your system is just useless. It's absolutely useless to do a blockchain if you don't think about ecosystem at the beginning of the project. So we are using in Kapalt this kind of representation. We call it RAGE criteria, and it's based, you know, on the Ikigai Japanese symbol of wealth for people when they are at ease in their professional life. And we apply it for blockchain to say a project in blockchain must have these 4 criteria, and if you lack one of them, you will not succeed at the end. The first one is the most basic, is relevance. Is blockchain something useful to solve your business issue? Okay, if not, why using blockchain? Use ADI, use regular database. You don't need blockchain if it's not relevant. Second criteria, applicability. Is the technology mature enough? Can you have the right performance in terms of network, transaction, speed, security, respect of norm and standard, okay? And the 2 other, which are in general very well forgotten, is governance and ecosystem. Ecosystem is where are you working at the beginning, and with who are you gonna work in 5 years and 10 years? If you don't have a very clear view of your ecosystem, it doesn't work. And governance is just as important, is who is paying for what? Who has the right to enter? Who is gonna pay for which kind of services? So it's the who is doing what, who is paying for, and who do you need, and who is giving authorization? Because when you are doing a consortium, everybody, you are not like in the Bitcoin world, you are identified, you have to enter, you have to have business rules, and you have to respect some rules. So there is governance, not only IT governance, network governance, which is a very important part of the job, but there is a very, very important aspect of business governance. Okay, so if you look at that, business value is not very easy. So it's one of the points of difficulty for blockchain, because just, you know, everybody I know probably have already done business case and business plan and assessing business value of a project. The big issue with blockchain is you have a dynamic view of the different parties, involved parties. When you are doing a project, in general, you have 2, 3, 4 parties which are very well defined at the beginning of the project, and we stay static. Here, you move in terms of who is involved, the number of people involved, and sometimes you are dealing with your own competitors. Okay, Walmart is working with Carrefour on the same blockchain. It's number one and number two, and they are competitors. Merck is working with CMA CGM and with some German company, where they are just competitors, but they share information and they share an infrastructure. So to build a business case is something which is quite difficult. It's where it's why Kapalt is trying to work on this area: governance, business case, and ecosystem, which is a very important part. Technology is very important. My point is not to say that everything is wonderful in terms of technology. It's moving every day. It's evolving very quickly. But do not forget the business part, the ecosystem part, the governance part, just to build any blockchain initiative. Sorry, it has been a little bit too long, but we are absolutely ready to answer any question you may have.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Maxime, for introducing your approach, for helping us sharing your view on blockchain and the project. And please, everybody who has questions, please feel free to use the chat function. May I ask one first question, because you mentioned the TradeLens project, which we actually already had in Hanseatic Blockchain Institute. So we had a guy from IBM presenting that to us, which was pretty interesting about a year ago. One of the core aspects you mentioned is that the TradeLens project was something where one player in the industry started setting up the system, setting up the idea, in this case merged it together with IBM, and then they asked others to join. So it was not a kind of cooperative project where just all of a kind of certain group. From the idea of blockchain, it's much more about a roundtable approach, where not one player in the industry says, okay, I'm going to start something with blockchain, you competitors please join, but where they cooperate to set up a structure and a network and an architecture they want to use. From your experience, how good does it work? Have you often seen several companies sitting together trying to start a common project, which is a blockchain-based project?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. It's one of the departure. What is your starting point of the journey? Okay, you're right. What I was saying is, yes, it was a project led by Merck because it's number one in the world. And of course, he has to move in time to adapt his data governance, his IP project, IP, and all this stuff to allow competitors to enter in the loop. Because if they are not in the loop, the project has no interest. So if you are a very big player, you can begin to be alone with your own ecosystem and thinking about how can I do something which is open enough and clever enough, and in terms of data governance, for instance, or property, and to allow the other to come into the group. After, you can work together, but working together need to build in general, first of all, a kind of consortium. Okay, you build a consortium, and after you launch a blockchain project. I don't see a lot of projects who are beginning as a consortium, just launched by company without an external or formal structure. You can take, for instance, B3I, you know, reinsurance consortium. It's built first, and after you begin your blockchain journey. You see what I mean? It's not a project between reinsurance and Munich Re and AXA. It's a project of, I build a structure, this structure is separated with a company, and I know that I will have to work with all the big insurance company, reinsurance company, and insurance company. So most of the projects are either led by someone which is trying to attract his own ecosystem, okay? Or it's something where you can build from a consortium and after sell it to the whole industry as a consortium. But, well, Merck if you take, for instance, Food Trust, Walmart is working with Carrefour, okay? But the holder of the solution is separate, is IBM. Food Trust is handled by IBM, which is not in the retail business. You understand the point? So there are somewhere a technological provider which can say, I'm neutral, which is not true. They begin with Walmart. So we are not in a Christmas tree world. It's business world. So yes, it's neutral technology, but anyway, is working with big customers. And the first you are in the loop, the more important you are in terms of governance and technology. You know, it's like SAP. If you are at the board of SAP, or if you are the user group of user of SAP, is better if you are big than if you are a small SME. It's the same story. But you're right. Blockchain can be something we can have different departure, but company working together without a structure and succeeding in working together, it's quite exceptional. Yeah. I say in industry, it's quite difficult, but it's possible.
Yeah. We have one question from the auditorium regarding TradeLens. Rainer is asking, it seems that mostly big companies joined TradeLens so far in the maritime sector, including back hinterland, I don't even know, transport. We have in Europe a lot of small and medium enterprises like truck operators and so on. Are the small and medium enterprises able to join TradeLens in terms of costs, or is TradeLens just for big companies?
In my opinion, but it needs to be verified. Yes, at the beginning of the project, the goal was to form digital asset around containers. So so they had to be joined by all the ocean carriers. Yeah. And now, if I'm not mistaken, and it needs to be looked at on the website, they are starting to do land transportation as well. You have different type of contributor in the ecosystem, and you can join as a data provider. And I don't think there is any barrier to entry as far as your standard your data comply with the way TradeLens operate. Yeah. So it needs to be looked at, but I think yeah, they are much looking at SME joining the program, at least as a data provider. In the exchange, they will have as well a view of the operation on with who they can collaborate within their ecosystem.
And I think it's an important point, because I guess that it's really linked to the, let's say, evolving nature of the technology. If you work in big consortium like that, the problem is very, very hard at the beginning. You work with labs. You have very difficult issue, technical, networking, performance issue to solve. So Merck or Walmart or what this company, at the beginning, they want to be in a very close circle because there is very big issue. Little by little, of course, the business model move. And yes, if you take the pricing model of TradeLens, I don't know now, but a few months ago, it was very similar to a software as a service. It was not very sophisticated in terms of paying model. So I don't know if it's still the same. So I guess they want to have more and more flexibility in terms of actors and contributors in the system. But at the beginning, it's true that it's a little bit, let's say, big elephants in the same room rather than medium-sized player. Yeah.
I think you mentioned governance as an important issue, and the kind of theoretical idea of blockchain and decentralized operations is that there is a group of stakeholders and there is some decision-making processes where everybody is involved and everybody has to vote or whatsoever. And this is again an issue that's a little bit tricky with TradeLens, because TradeLens has been developed by IBM. IBM is running the nodes, and I think if there are any kind of changes to the system or new kind of rules or regulations or something like that, essentially IBM would be the one to decide. There is not even a board or a kind of a democratic process.
When IBM started the project with Merck, like a few years ago, the Hyperledger Fabric protocol was still in version 0.6, if I'm not mistaken. It was not very stable. So they had to centralize quite a lot of things in the governance to be able to go into production. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Ocean Carrier can run their own nodes on their infrastructure. So, for example, CMA CGM, which is one of the third or fourth player in after Merck's, they are fully integrated within the TradeLens network, based on their own cloud providers, on their own infrastructure. So they're not using, maybe they're using IBM if it's their choice, but at least that's what I've heard recently. On the other hand, for example, French port are not yet allowed to be on the TradeLens network, because integration with ports on the TradeLens network is still centralized with Merck's IBM joint venture. So the French government said it's a loss of sovereignty, and they want to wait that the features of this centralization on port can be running their own nodes to be able to move French port on the TradeLens network, for example. So the governance is evolving, but it's still an emerging technology. So some of the players are trying to centralize in some way, but it's still going on the right direction.
I think that, yeah, I think that it's a matter of evolution. If you take, for instance, CMA CGM, okay, French company, number 4, 5, 6, whatever, in this area. I guarantee you can read that in the news. A few months ago, they say, we will never enter TradeLens because it's our data and we don't want our data on a Merck-centric platform. I swear, not me, CMA CGM. Okay, 6 months after, they enter. Just it was discussion, it was struggle, and the data governance have moved. So I guess, okay, maybe Merck or IBM are stupid and they want to lose the business, but I guess that they are standing on a point and they are obliged to move if they want a real blockchain project. So you're right. From a philosophical point of view, it was not really distributed and not very decentralized view. You're right. But if you want to succeed in blockchain, you have to move your system little by little. And for instance, if you take Walmart is pushing his own small producer to be on the blockchain. And it's Walmart who say to them, we pay for you. But if you don't, bye-bye. So yes, is it democratic? Not fully sure. But so it's a business orientation which is changing day after day just to succeed.
Okay, even though it's quite late, we have another question that points in the same direction from Maria, and she's essentially saying when there are lots of governance issues that need to be solved, and the question is, to what extent in this project you mentioned can you link with DAOs, so with decentralized autonomous organizations? This has been a buzzword for quite a while, and we want to create a DAO. And if you look at the idea of DAO from a corporate perspective, do you see any potential of decentralized autonomous organizations playing a relevant role in the corporate world?
Well, not really in the previous, I would say, old school blockchain project or DLT project, which were clearly based on a view of efficiency optimization and trying to do better. Some people say it's not blockchain because it's too much centralized, and maybe I don't care about too much about the semantics, but you're right. Now I think there is a very, very huge potential for new application, new business, new asset, and it can include a corporate view. So I think it's new project we are beginning and we are existing already, which are not very, for the moment, in a highly visible or production phase, but we are working on it. So I guess, but I think that you need, it's a little bit like a lot of projects, I don't know in Germany, but we see in France, it's a company we are dealing with a new startup, a spin-off, working separately with the same people, but the people are delegated to a new structure, and you can do something which is more clever, more flexible, more so it's, let's say, a new view of corporate. I'm not sure it will be directly included in the whole corporate way, but I think yes, there is a potential. Yeah.
I think DAO could be a big disruptor, but you have to when you build a DAO, you have to start from scratch. It's very difficult to build a DAO based on a legacy system, or it's too disruptive. Maybe it could work, I don't know, but most of the projects are or starting from scratch and wants to disrupt the whole thing from 0 to 1.
Right. Okay. There's one. I think that should be the final question from Alexander. Alexander is asking, so in your opinion, will blockchain become a GPT, a general purpose technology like electricity and internet, lowering cost of verification and networking where applicable? And I like this question because I think once in one of our events I said, I remember the time some 15 years ago where when you went to a shop, you were asking them, so by the way, do you have a website? And that was the start of the internet. And I can very well imagine, because more and more corporations are just asking you to provide them with some personal data, like, so please put here your name and your age and your health or whatsoever. And I could very well imagine that at some point in time, people will ask, okay, you want to have my data. Are you going to store this data on a blockchain? Yeah. And if this becomes a standard question, and because we have been able to raise the awareness of who owns my data, who has access to my data, what might happen with my data, then I think the blockchain technology in a consumer or in a kind of personal individual level has really reached a relevant level. But yeah, do you think that blockchain will become a general purpose technology and will be widespread? And maybe when do you think it will be kind of a standard?
I think it's at least it already started to be a general purpose technology, at least in France. So we had the debate in the last few months or a few years on more on the B2B side. If right now the technology is more accessible to big company, can aggregate all the skills to deploy blockchain within an ecosystem, you need to be able to legally secure the access of this network to any company in the futures. Otherwise, it could start to be a huge monopoly. For example, in the automobile industry, in the car industry, if one manufacturer start to do his own network with his suppliers, on the other one is doing as well a network, every supplier has to connect and integrate to 1, 2, 3 networks, and it starts to be a nightmare. So it needs to be thought as an infrastructure layer where everyone can enter the business rule and start transact on that networks, and it cannot stay like the exclusivity of some big company who wants to put more barrier to entry to new market.
Yeah.
So I think it's already started on the B2B side. On the B2C side, there is still, yes, there's this big debate on personal data protection, but I don't think blockchain is still mature enough to be able to secure the and become a general
Yeah.
technology.
It has a potential, but it will take time. And just one point, which is just an historical point of view. If you compare internet and blockchain, internet has been built by technicians, architects as a common infrastructure somewhere to make server be able to discuss together. Okay, it was a technical point of view. Blockchain was the beginning of blockchain was Bitcoin. So it was one application, absolutely non-general purpose infrastructure. And second aspect, it touched money. Bitcoin is money, currency.
Definitely, yeah.
Which is not internet. Internet was a technical aspect. There is money involved, but not money. You cannot become rich in 2 weeks with internet and DARPA. Right. Bitcoin was different. So the story is very different. So I guess, yes, there is this potential, but for B2C or C2C, there is a potential, but it will take time in terms of convergence, interoperability, and there is absolutely no standard approach in blockchain for the up-to-date. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we are getting to an end. Just many thanks to Maxime and Marc. Two final remarks from my side. First of all, we talked about trade lanes. I don't know if everybody is aware that here in Hamburg we have a small blockchain project for the logistics sector called Hanseblock, and Hanseblock is going to have a kind of a closing conference of their project. They have been working on usage of blockchain in logistics, and on the 26th of November they will have a virtual event, and I put the link to this event on the chat if someone should be interested. That's the first thing I wanted to mention briefly. And then I just wanted to make you aware that next week, next Monday, we will have some quite interesting and exciting for me. We have a speaker from the Ukraine, and we will be talking about tracking and tracing of Bitcoin. So everybody felt that Bitcoin is anonymous, and more people become aware that it's kind of anonymous. And we have Alex, and he's working for a company who's specialized in the forensics of Bitcoin tracing. They try to defeat and money laundering, and he will share with us some insights on how you can trace legal and even illegal activities based on Bitcoin and on that blockchain. So that's so far from me. Once again, Maxime, Marc, wishing you a wonderful evening. Thank you very much for being here. And I think both of you are open if there are any questions or other issues arising. They are both on LinkedIn. Please reach out to them if you have anything additional. And maybe it's interesting for both of you to look into the Hanseblock project. I tend to assume that this will be in German.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Tschüss. Schön, dass ihr da wart. Schönen Abend euch.